that's the shit that blows my mind. Is before he drops out, they scream that he should drop out. He's unfit. He should drop out. He's unfit. And he gives you what you want, and he concedes. Fine, fuck it, you win. And he goes, I'm dropping out.
I'm gonna step back and.
Oh well, undemocratic. They're just gonna pick the vice president to take his spot. That's by the way.
What do you mean? Just pick the.
By the way, that's how
it works.
That's line of secession. That's how it's supposed to work.
Vice President Harris in 2019.
Hold on.
GovTrack, which covers legislation and voting records, referred to then Senator Kamala Harris as that year's most liberal senator.
Wow, that is clipped hard.
Yeah.
I want to know what came after that. That is a 7-second clip, and they cut off immediately after that last word. Like, what was the next line?
Yeah.
All right, Colton Garcia's post here. What do we got? Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Jake Tapper reports that in 2019, Kamala Harris was named the most liberal senator. That's right, she's a radical leftist. We can't let this continue. It's time to win big in November. I don't know how you got radical from that. There's liberals and there's radical liberals. Let's
It's awfully
have a look here.
milk toasty for the.
Let's have a look here. All right, there we go.
Sounds like a slow news day, I guess. I don't know.
I'll need to make it so you can hear what I hear. All right, there we go.
Vice President Harris in 2019, GovTrack, which covers legislation and voting records, referred to then Senator Kamala Harris as that year's most liberal senator. Vice President Harris in 2019, GovTrack, which covers legislation and voting records, referred to then Senator Kamala Harris as that year's most liberal senator.
Wow, that is clipped hard.
Yeah,
I want to know what came after that. That is a 7-second clip, and they cut off immediately after that last word. Like, what was the next line? Yeah. That's cut out of context hard. What is the next line? Here we go. Here's the full fucking video. Let's see the full context of this shit.
That was Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. He is the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks for joining us. So let's talk about your colleague, Vice President Harris. In 2019, GovTrack, which covers legislation and voting records, referred to then Senator Kamala Harris as that year's most liberal senator, although in other years she had other assessments. You have worked with the Vice.
So immediately after, although another year she had other assessments. So it was that one particular year, which means either she was extreme or not shit happened that year and nobody else did anything. She was just the one person pushing back. So, yeah, that's what they do, man. They clip shit extremely out of fucking context. The very next, the way they hard cut it, like, as soon as that word ended, let me know that there's something immediately after. Like, we didn't have to wait very long at all.
Vice President, when she was in the Senate, when she was on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Tell us about that experience.
Well, I both worked with Senator Harris and I got to know her, or I spent time with her. She and her husband, Doug, and Lisa and I had some social time together. But what I can speak to most is her role on the Intelligence Committee.
All right, let's hear these extreme policies.
To understand that she's going to go into a job, hopefully when she's elected, in a dangerous world. We've got to stand up against Russia. We've got to monitor China's outward aggression and particularly technology competition. Iran is a constant irritant. And what I saw...
Just say we got to try to avoid World War III.
Was her willingness to dig in, both in the closed sessions where she asked very thoughtful for questions. She played an incredibly important role in the 2016 bipartisan Russia interference in our elections. And I think in many ways she kind of got launched on her national exposure when she did some remarkable questioning of then Attorney General Jeff Sessions. And remember, she was the most junior member of the committee, so to be last in line and still, frankly, had the most important questioning of the whole hearing shows what kind of prosecutorial skills she has as well.
So she and President Biden are meeting separately with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, today. This is a day after the Prime Minister's speech to Congress. Netanyahu is also going to meet with former President Trump tomorrow. How do you see the future of the U.S.-Israeli relationship if Netanyahu remains prime minister?
Don't send him KFC. I know that much. Man does not like chicken.
I agree Israel's got a right to defend itself. I agree that Hamas are horrendous terrorists.
Yeah, I hate hummus too, buddy.
To be destroyed. But what I didn't hear from the prime minister was a recognition that there are an awful lot of folks all over the world, and including in America, that rightfully are concerned about the fact that 40,000 Palestinians
Are they
died
though?
in this conflict.
How many of them are just virtue signaling?
From the prime minister was the fact that we do have a chance, due to the Abraham Accords that were started under President Trump, but
Stop
also
the fence sitting.
potential of
He's not
an
going to
alliance
mention
with
them
Saudi
because,
Arabia that would
unlike
involve recognition of
because he
Israel,
knows that nobody's
bring
really
a
pissed about it.
whole
Like the rest of the world's just
peaceful
virtue signaling. He's like,
Yeah.
what the fuck
to
ever.
that region.
He's focused on
That's
his
gonna
people.
require
He
into the
ain't
conflict
focused on
Gaza
Twitter points like everybody
a
else.
two-state solution. We didn't hear any of that from the prime minister yesterday.
3 weeks
gonna-
ago, there was talk of you circulating.
There ain't gonna be a
letter among
two-state
Senate
solution. It's
Democrats
never
as
gonna
you
fucking
try to
work.
convince President Biden to drop his re-election.
Like they have
bid,
to
which
agree on
obviously
one
he did on
government, or
Sunday.
they're just
After
gonna
that article in
fight
the
for
Washington
fucking ever.
Post, You kind of went
That's how
silent.
that's gonna work.
Disappeared from public view on the matter. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, Jake, even before that article that frankly I was not even quoted in, I think that my conversations with my fellow senators, I'm kind of old-fashioned, they were confidential, and I think they ought to stay confidential. I think the president made the right decision. I think we saw a true American patriot last night. I think his record will stand the test of time. Not just the legislative record from the CHIPS bill to the infrastructure to the dramatic changes we've made in energy, not only to the expansion of NATO and standing up against foreign aggression, but look at those GDP growth numbers today. 2.9%. I mean, the American economy is the envy of the world. Now, I know Donald Trump doesn't believe that, and I know Donald Trump thinks America is stupid, and that anybody, Democrat or Republican, I guess, that's American leader is stupid. But that's not the kind of America that Joe Biden has.
The numbers
and that's not the kind of
don't support
America
everyone
that I think
screaming that the
most
economy's
Americans
bad.
feel about our country.
I mean, the numbers kind
Is
of
it
say the
accurate, though,
opposite.
that you were encouraging President Biden to step down, which he has now agreed to do, that you were concerned about his ability to win, perhaps even his ability
fake
to
numbers.
govern for 4 more years?
I think Joe Biden's been a great president. I know he's going to finish out strong. And my conversations with my fellow Democratic senators and the idea that we needed to talk about best steps forward, those were confidential. And it's a little old-fashioned, but I'm going to keep those confidential going forward.
Okay, yeah, you said
whether
that
I'm
already.
talking to a Democrat or a Republican, some of these things, we ought to respect confidences.
It's no secret that before President Biden made this decision, polls for Democrats were cratering, including indicating that the next line of possible battleground states
polls
were
went up
opening
after
up,
he
states such
announced
as
he was dropping out.
Minnesota and New Mexico.
So
and
this-
Colorado,
so this idea
and of course your home
that
Commonwealth
they're all
of
screaming
Virginia,
that,
where there
you
is
know,
a Senate race
that this is
in addition
something
to a
no one
presidential
wanted and it's
race.
undemocratic,
Do
and
you
they're
think
pulling that.
that
I'm like,
bleeding
again,
has stopped?
the
Do you
numbers
think that Vice
not
President
on your
Harris
side
is
here
gonna keep
because
Virginia blue?
Absolutely. Listen, I was
the numbers were
worried when I
down.
saw
He announced he's
polls
dropping
showed
out. The
Donald
numbers
Trump
went up.
ahead.
So
Wow.
clearly, a lot of
Those
people did want it
and
because they're
I'll
back
give you a
on board
better
now.
example. I just did a state press
I don't know how that's
They were talking about
undemocratic.
Petersburg, which is a
You
heavily
know,
African-American community
they
south of
spoke.
Richmond.
The poll
They're
numbers
seeing the
spoke
last
for
4
them.
days,
Yeah, you're right. He didn't
numbers
vote
of
for
people
Kamala Harris because
coming
there's no
and
primary to be
registering.
had now. This has never been done before.
You can feel the
So
energy,
instead,
you can
they
feel the
they
enthusiasm.
spoke. They used
I
their
think
they
that
used the
is
polls to speak their
good
voice,
for
and
Kamala Harris.
it's
I
very
think
clear
it's
the
better.
consensus is they're
Clear
fine
for
with
the
this.
people.
Our country.
No one's
Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Thanks so much.
Okay.
no one's as upset about it as
Yeah,
they
it's yeah. That's the shit that blows my mind. Is before he drops out, they scream that he should drop out. He's unfit. He should drop out. He's unfit. And he gives you what you want, and he concedes. Fine, fuck it, you win. And he goes, I'm dropping out.
I'm gonna step back and.
Oh well, undemocratic. They're just gonna pick the vice president to take his spot. That's by the
What
way.
do you mean? Just pick the.
By the way, that's how
it
that
works.
that's line of secession. That's how it's supposed to work. Of course she would be the next.
This ain't new.
Of course that's what the vice. It's literally why we have a vice president. Is so if the president drops out, gets sick, can't perform, she steps up to the plate.
Yeah.
He dropped out of the race. She stepped up to the plate. There's nothing undemocratic or out of the norm here.
In fact, it's working as it should.
Yeah, it's working as intended. This is not a bug, it's a feature. This is not. Jesus Christ.
Oh my.